And without further ado again, I'll introduce Johann Hari, someone himself who recently has experienced the full might of what it is like to fall out with the press and the Twitter community. Johann.
Thank you. I don't normally read from a text, but because of my discovery of Valium in the past week, I don't really trust myself to speak freely, except about the music of Lou Reed, which I think is not really that relevant. So I now understand why my mother was strangely calm all through my childhood. I was asked here today to speak about the threat to free speech from religious fundamentalism, which I have some experience of myself, which is large and is growing, and I think reflects the wider need for free speech. But before I do, I think it would be remiss to not explain that I've had, I think, a valuable lesson for me in the past week about the value of free speech. As some of you will know, I did something wrong. I did something idiotic. And some people use their freedom of speech to point that out. And the real test of free speech is not do you support it when people are saying you're great. It's do you support it when people are saying something painful and humiliating about you? And I absolutely do. And more than that, I've learned that it's when you're in the wrong that you need free speech the most. Because it's only if people are free to point out your mistakes and to do it aggressively and loudly and with laughter that you learn to get it right. And as much as it hurts, and it has really hurt, I feel more keenly the value of free speech today than I ever have. What I'd like to talk about now is a different parable about free speech, one in which I play a thankfully smaller role. It's the speech I was asked here to give. Back in 2009, I wrote an article in which I warned that the right to criticize religion is being slowly doused in acid. All over the world, the small incremental gains made by secularism, which give us the space to doubt and question and make up our own minds, are being beaten back by belligerent demands that we respect religion. And I warned that a particular historical marker was being passed, which I think showed how far we were being shoved. The UN has a rapporteur whose job is to be the global guardian of free speech. And he was having his job rewritten to put him on the side of the religious censors. I'll just explain. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights stated 60 years ago that, these are the words, "A world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief is the highest aspiration of the common people." It's a Magna Carta for mankind, and it's loathed by every human rights abuser out there everywhere. You know, today the Chinese government calls it Western, Robert Mugabe calls it colonialist, and Dick Cheney calls it outdated. And the countries of the world have failed to meet it serially. But that document is something that every dissident everywhere in the world can hold up and say, this is my right. I have this. You don't have the right to take this away from me. And then the UN was proposing to change that. What happened is, starting in 1999, a coalition of Islamic fundamentalist tyrants, despised by their own people, as we've seen this year, led by the disgusting tyrant of Saudi Arabia, demanded these rules be rewritten. The demand for everyone to be able to think and speak freely failed, they said, to respect the unique sensitivities of the religious. They said they should be replaced with something called an Islamic Declaration of Human Rights, which said that you can speak within, quote, the limits set by Sharia law. It is not permitted to spread falsehood or disseminate that which involves encouraging abomination or forsaking the Islamic community, end quote. So in other words, you can say what you want as long as the mullahs say you can say it. And it's a declaration that makes it clear there's no rights for women, there's no rights for gays, there's no rights for non-Muslims, there's no rights for so-called apostates who change their view. And it's really, one of the interesting things about religious fundamentalists is it's like they have a trade union. The Vatican came in and said, yeah, we kind of agree with this. So you had this coalition of fundamentalists. And incredibly, they were succeeding. The UN's rapporteur on human rights was tasked with exposing and shaming those who prevent free speech, including the religious. But the Pakistani delegate demanded and got a really positive response when he said that the job description should be changed so that this person's job should instead be to condemn, quote, abuses of free expression, including defamation of religion. Remember, this is in the wake of the Mohammed cartoons affair, in which drawing a cartoon was declared to be a capital offence by many governments across the world. And the council agreed. So the job was being turned on its head. Instead of condemning the people who wanted to murder Salman Rushdie, the United Nations would be condemning Salman Rushdie himself. So anything that can be deemed religious was declared to be no longer the subject of discussion at the UN. A great man called Roy Brown, head of the International Humanist and Ethical Union, tried to bring up the topic of the stoning of women accused of adultery. And the Egyptian delegate stood up and he said, "We will not have this discussion. Islam will not be crucified in this council." And Brown was ordered to shut up. Of course, the first victims of locking down free speech about Islam are those women who are Muslim, who are going to be stoned. Those gay people who are Muslim, who are going to be stoned. And it was being done with the imprimatur of the United Nations. And those of us who support the UN and love the UN and hate the American right constantly demonizing it, we're the people who need to be most angry about that. And underpinning these reforms is an argument that is seeping into our society as well, that atheism and doubt are akin to racism. Today, if you criticize a superstitious belief, people will tell you you are being prejudiced, that you are being bigoted. And my only prejudice in this matter is in favour of individuals being able to choose to live their lives their way without intimidation. That means choosing religion or rejecting religion as they wish after hearing the open and disputatious argument about it. A religious idea is an idea someone had a long time ago they claimed to have received from God. That's it. It doesn't have a different status to other ideas. It is not surrounded by an electric wire fence called respect that none of us can cross. All people deserve respect, but not all ideas do. And in response to this change, what I wrote was, and this got a reaction I'll get to in a minute, if you want me to be honest, I don't respect the idea a man was born of a virgin, walked on water and rose from the dead. I don't respect the idea that we should follow a so-called prophet who at the age of 53 had sex with a 9-year-old girl and ordered the murder of whole villages of Jews because they wouldn't follow him. I don't respect the idea that the West Bank should be given to Jewish fundamentalists and the Palestinians should be bombed and bullied into surrendering it. I don't respect the idea that I might have lived before as a woodlouse and might live again as a goat. You know, I don't. And if you ask me to say I respect that, you're asking me to con you. Now, after I made this case, something kind of strange happened. An Indian newspaper called The